Hi,
What's
I'm
going
Dieter.
on, folks? I'm Jake.
That's Jake. We're here at Levi Stadium. After
The
was
Cauldron.
this OTAs or mini camp?
I think this is OTAs, and then it becomes mini camp.
What is the difference?
1 year you have to go to, and 1 you don't.
Well,
and then you start getting fined, and then contract stuff starts getting weird.
Cool. Well, Brandon Ayuk, I'm sure, is not worried at all about that. Stunningly, not here. Who could have seen that coming? A couple other guys not here. I mean, I didn't see Christian McCaffrey.
I think Malik Collins.
I
almost said Malik Willis.
Kind of weird.
No, I think he's got a thing with his kids.
Okay.
Kids are graduating elementary school.
Listen.
Good for him.
Yep, awesome. It is voluntary. Trent Williams obviously not here. Nick Bosa is just sort of hanging around.
Yeah, he practiced in the first set of OTAs.
Yeah,
and now he's just hanging around. He's here.
I
think Matt Barrows hypothesized to me that because the Chargers are actually like practicing with Harbaugh, that Nick was like, well, I guess I might as well come to 49ers camp since Joey's out in Southern California. I got nothing better to do.
That's yeah, that's an interesting take. I do think with all the changes on the defensive line, it's probably good to have Bosa in the meetings. And I don't know, Jake. I mean, listen, we're only given a 90-minute or so window,
right?
Once a week, if we're lucky.
There's no pads,
right? I'll give you a couple of quick takeaways.
Okay.
One, this team is cooked, done, screwed. If Brock Purdy misses any time.
I thought you were just going to leave it at that.
Just over. The team that has the highest over-under.
They are cooked.
They're done. I've seen enough here
The only team that's favored in all 17 games.
Yeah. Can I get some odds on that not being the case for the rest of the season? Regardless, I think we all know what Brandon Allen is. And
he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. That's the nice way of putting I sure don't want to see him in a game. And then Josh Dobbs has not looked very good at all in the limited windows that we've seen.
Weirder throwing motion than I realized.
It's like he's winding it up.
Yeah, it's like he's going like...
Yeah, it's Tebow-esque, and that's not
Brandon
a compliment.
Allen did throw us a couple balls.
Like literally, Jake and I are 10 yards off the field.
I got a nice one.
I mean, listen, deep enough throw. It got some air under it.
Got some wind under it.
Jake with a nice kick save there. Igor Shesterkin over
But then it ended up in my left hand, and so I had to...
He could have changed hands. He had every opportunity.
Could have, but I committed, and then so I looked pathetic throwing the ball
It
back.
was not Mahomesian. That would have been cool.
It's okay. It's something that will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's like a weird sports media thing is this. It taps in. I know a lot of people, if you put them gun to their head and it's like, do you think you could have been a professional athlete? It'd be like, no, that's ridiculous. I know the skills. But anytime like a ball comes to you in a professional sports setting, you're like, here's my chance.
Listen, man, that ball,
it was a great kick.
Feels nice.
It's they rubbed it up real good.
That's pretty. It sounded sus.
The mud is appropriate on those balls right now. I looked at it. I go, that looks good. I bet that feels good.
All right, we got to move on.
Okay. Another takeaway that I had. I think Ricky Pearsall is just fine. I can't see any reason to doubt him. I mean, if you want to say, oh, he shouldn't have been a first-round pick or whatever, like he's just going to be productive. He's just going to look like a pro from day one. He was wearing a blue jersey today, reasons which have not been explained to us
yet. I meant
yet.
to check on that. It's fine.
Regardless,
it's OTAs.
Regardless, probably pretty easy to play wide receiver if no one's allowed to touch you. That did not seem to be the case on the field. They were all over him.
They were covering him tight. There's one nice play with Isaac Yiadom.
Yeah.
It was like a scramble drill. Yeah. Came across. Yiadom was covering him, and then Purdy rolled right and found him. That's kind of valuable if you found a guy who has the instincts for that. I mean, I feel like it's a pretty intuitive thing, but there are some guys who
seems baseline wide receiver, but
don't have that in sync with the quarterback.
Well, even beyond that, I mean, there's a lot of guys who never had to do anything like that in college,
right?
And then they're in the NFL, and it's like everyone's just
right.
Layered
that's also
on
what made the Seahawks so good for so many years. Is scramble drill, and Russell Wilson like finding Tyler Lockett.
That's right,
and made the comp a little bit last year. That Purdy's a little bit like Russell Wilson.
Listen,
like
we were first on that beat. I've written it into perpetuity.
I still think it's a great take.
I'm not. People were angry, and that's fine because those people are wrong and I am right.
And here's the thing: has anyone done more damage to their legacy than Russell Wilson over the last few? Because he was like everyone's like, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer.
O.J. Simpson, Wander Franco, Richard Sherman hasn't been helping his cause lately. There's listen, it feels as if the infamous are overtaking the famous every day. But you're right.
Any Chiefs player,
any Kansas City Chief ever. I could have made a
literally a Chiefs player got brought up on animal abuse charges today.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
they can pick them. But you know what? Yep. They have that Super Bowl. They don't have that new locker room, but they have that Super Bowl.
Yep. Terrible organization. Just got the greatest quarterback that maybe ever will be.
Anyone who ever wants to come at me for my it's a head coach and quarterback league take, it's like Kansas City.
Oh,
like, what did they have? Okay, maybe it's a tight end and defensive tackle league too.
I'm really intrigued to see what happens when Big Red goes. Because what are they at that point? It feels like they're going to botch that completely.
Oh, yeah.
And they deserve to.
Absolutely. I mean, think about how they lucked into that situation in the first place. Like, gets fired from Philly because Philly's like, I guess we have to do this now. Like, this makes no logical sense.
We just decided
it's just vibes.
It's time.
The vibes be down.
Which,
and so
fair.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
didn't work out too well.
They did win a Super Bowl. They didn't win 3. Okay. One other takeaway. I think I'm stealing it from you. I mean, Yadam is somebody you've been talking up here for a minute.
I think he's going to start.
Well, they had him in Charvarius Ward's spot today.
Yep.
And he did not look out of place. And sure, Brandon Ayuk's not there, but like you had Debo, you had Pearsall, you had some pretty good receivers out there. Juwan Jennings re-signed today. He was not out there. I would have noticed that. He's a very large man.
He was throwing with Tanner Mordecai on the side.
Well, one of those guys is going to be in the NFL this year, and it's not Tanner Mordecai. I think Yadam looked really good.
Yeah,
and this is something
he looked good last week
that we were talking about. I mean, say what you will about the position in and of itself, but cornerback has gone from absolute danger zone. And let's be clear, it's May. We got to get into training camp. We got to see it. But like 7-on-7s gives you a pretty good indication of how well these guys can stick and how well these guys can play. Like wide receivers, quarterbacks. Nice
plays from Renardo Green. Renardo Green had a really nice breakup, a decent route by Ronnie Bell. Green was in the slot and just broke on it. He got out leverage and then caught up quickly and broke on it.
Yeah.
They've got depth there. And we were talking it out. I think they're going
to have to cut a good player or two.
Yeah, because you've got Yadam, who I think is starting opposite Charvarius Ward.
That would be in Ambry Thomas's spot.
Right. And then I think Lenore should stay in the slot.
Yeah. So those are your 3. You got
those
Ward, Lenore,
then you got Yadam. Renardo Green, who's a lock. Then you've got
and has looked awesome.
Yeah.
Every time I've laid eyes on Renardo Green, I'm like, that dude.
I know, and it feels criminal not to start him, but I think Yadam is that good, and maybe Green overtakes him.
Yeah, I mean, halfway through the season, it's probably a swap.
He's a rookie. It's really good depth, and then you
need depth at that position too, because that's just pull your groin central, as we saw with Rock Ya-Sin today.
Yeah, he was going to be in the mix, but he has been perpetually injured his whole career.
He literally took 1 snap and then pulled his groin.
It didn't look great. And then you've got Chase Lucas, who I think they brought him in for special teams. Yeah. He made a nice play at nickel. Like, I think he's probably going to make the team. And so then you've got...
He's your backup nickel.
So then if you keep 6 corners, you've got Sam Womack, Darrell Luter, and Ambry Thomas all competing for 1 spot, where you suddenly go, they have depth. Like, they have very, very solid depth.
We're at a point where somebody who, if you were having to pencil it in today, I know you say Yadam, but the 49ers are going to give preference to the guy who's been here before. If they were, I'm sure they wouldn't, but if they had to put out a depth chart today, they'd have Ambry Thomas opposite Charvarius Ward. We're in a situation where the 49ers could very well cut Ambry Thomas by the end of training camp.
Wouldn't shock at all.
And in fact, it's probably the prudent play, given that I thought Womack had a play at the very end of practice where he got called for pass interference. I thought it was BS. Yeah. I thought it was a great play. It was a nice throw, actually, if you want to give some credit to Brandon Allen. That was a nice throw.
Right.
It was a stupid throw, but it was nice. And it did bring about a pass interference that, again, I didn't see. And we were staring right at it. Regardless, he's a special teams dude through and through.
He's a special teams dude. He just plays like, I know cringy coach speak to say he just plays hard.
Yeah,
but
he's got a real grit to him.
But he does.
Real grinder.
And if you're a guy who's a little undersized like he is, you have to play that way.
Have you noticed Luter at all recently?
No.
I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Not necessarily a negative. Yeah. It's more they talked him up a lot last year, and I think he's gonna he shows something in training camp. But I think there's going to be a really tough competition for, and maybe that Lucas is not a lock. I wouldn't say he's a lock, but I think he's likely to make the roster.
It's hard to imagine. I mean, he's getting good money. I mean, he would have to look appreciably terrible.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be a solid backup slot corner, going to be great in special teams in a year that really matters. Yeah. Do we want to talk?
Let's get into that.
Special teams, yeah.
So Fleury was at
it was Brian Schneider, special teams coordinator.
I get them confused at the podium today, and not sure he actually answered any of our questions.
No,
he was abstract. He's like, I had it here, and now I have it here.
Which is to be honest,
I get it.
Kind of fair. We're like, so what do you think of the whole special teams rule? He's like, my brain was going to explode. Now I feel like it's not.
At least they're going to try something, and then they're probably going to be proven wrong, and then they'll try it again. Like, I'll repeat my point. It is criminal that Bill Belichick is no longer a coach in the National Football League.
Almost asked him if he's consulted Belichick.
Can someone get Pat McAfee's number so that they can get Bill Belichick's number?
Yeah.
The assault on sports journalism. Shout out the Atlantic. But can someone get Bill Belichick on the phone and just ask him, what would you do? And then do that. Because you know that him and Ernie would just be cooking on this bad boy.
Yeah. What Schneider really emphasized, and again, he's spoken sort of platitudes and generalizations.
He was still out here.
He did eventually, when asked who was to blame for the missed extra point in the Super Bowl.
How did we get there?
I don't know. You're talking about Jake Moody, and eventually he did say, Moody kicked it low. He's like, there's a number of factors. Moody kicked it low. Anyway, moving on. But what he did stress with the kickoff rule is everyone's confused. Like no one knows what to do.
There's no empirical place to start either.
Right, and there's just going to be he's like, I'm going to be watching so much tape every week. Everyone's going to be trying to see what sticks. He's like, we have a plan.
Yeah.
We'll see if it works. We're not sure.
Yeah.
And we also won't know throughout the year. Like this could be. It could be really, really fucking wild just to see some disastrous special teams units.
Here's a 94-yard field that you have to work with because we tried something and it did not work.
The tone was, I think he started off, he's like, very anxious.
Yeah.
Like excited for the challenge, but also I might lose my job, and so might many other special teams coordinators if we don't handle this right, because it's going to be all about adaptability and who can just be like, all right, let's figure this nightmare, really intriguing thing out.
I mean, it is cool, and he mentioned this, like, this is the first time anyone's had to do, so you get to create something.
Right.
Which has to be cool, because a lot of coaching is just trying to get people to do things the way that it's
of the game.
It's a forced innovation.
Yeah.
And so special teams coaches in particular don't get a lot of leeway to do that. And I would say specifically this team's special teams coordinators have received zero leeway because Kyle Shanahan views special teams as a burden that must be mitigated. That's it. He's only looking to mitigate, never to innovate. And now with this forced thing, they
have no choice.
They have the personnel. Yep. If any team has the personnel to do this, it's them. But they have no choice but to innovate. I'm really interested to see what they do, because we're going to find out out who's a good coach and who's not pretty fast.
Like who's going to put offensive linemen out there, and then who's just going to respond to that with all speedy guys, and the offensive linemen are going to whiff, or who's just going to build a human wall of offensive linemen and it's going to work. Like
3 returners back, 1 returner back. I mean, there's a lot of interesting ways that you could go about it. And ultimately, I think that the biggest thing that has to happen is you're going to have multiple versions of the play. So
and you're also going to have a lot of rules on preparing for reverses.
Though it did sound as if he's trying to limit the rules because of the space.
He was talking about angles and geometry.
He's like, I'm not very good at math, but everything is math. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem
like a good thing to openly admit. Parallelogram? It blew my mind.
We're looking for rhombuses. And if only we could find... I mean, it's going to have to be something where legitimately you're coordinating. And I would say that for years, you have not really run any plays in special teams. All you've been trying to do is herd cats. And get people into the right spot to do the one thing at that time. And it is a lot more complicated than it's ever let on, but it's also rather simple because it's here is our play. Right. Oh, you're going to run it left this time or right. It's the same play.
It's about building the conjoined triangles of success.
That's right. Shout out Silicon Valley. But like, it is, they're going to have to actually call plays and be coordinating and adapt. And like, I'm angry about losing the bathroom break, but I'm really interested to see how this goes. I can leave for offense or defense.
Yeah, are people going to mess with timing where, like, you know, some teams are all going to rush or some teams are going to say, well, actually wait to see how they do it and then try and I don't know.
And you intrinsically know the one thing that Kyle Shanahan's looking to do is how quickly can we fair catch? Like, how can we avoid any of this on principle? So, my hope is that the 49ers are like innovation, technology. Right. We can figure it out. We'll run it through AI simulations. You suggested
That's
today.
What I asked. I was like, are you running war games? Are you running simulations?
I wanted to laugh from 2 rows behind you because they're not giving any access. Right. This guy is on a 1997 Dell. That's what they give the special teams coordinators. Richard Hightower probably didn't have a key card.
Right.
And
I'm like, he should be... Like, he should be in one of those things where you put a helmet on and there's a screen and you just got these, like, claw-type
Minority reporting?
Yeah, 100%, where he's in it like a milk bath. He's just, and the precogs are telling him what he's supposed to do.
The precogs are like, you're fucked.
He has to replace his eyeballs, you know? You see that? You remember that scene?
Remember Player One? Minority Report's a great movie.
It's a great movie.
That's... Oh, so we don't talk about Minority Report? I mean, pre-crime... Let's be real. It's a real issue.
Yeah.
And when was he running in that film?
All of it.
Yeah, he ran the entire
I love that
movie.
he is like in his contract that Tom Cruise has to run in every single movie he's in.
He's a fascinating individual. And I'm not sure if he's chaotic good or chaotic evil. And I'm not sure if he knows.
No.
But he's chaotic.
I think he just wants to get as close to death as possible in every film he makes. And
Matt Damon was told a great story about, like, how did you get them to do that stunt? Right. And he's like, well, the original stunt coordinator's like, you can't do that, you'll die. So we got rid of that stunt coordinator.
And then he does a laugh again. That was haunting.
Thank you. And somehow we're still talking about special teams. Should Tom Cruise coordinate? Can we get a stunt coordinator and Tom Cruise in to figure out special teams? Who's to say
or should he just be returning kicks for the 49ers?
On a motorcycle.
I think last thing to talk about.
At this point.
Offensive line.
Yeah. We'll talk about Dominic Pooney today, baby.
Yeah, so we got to talk to our guy Chris Forster,
sorry, we always got to drop it. Just brings it. You want to talk about a diatribical...
And he's like aware too. He's like, I will not stop talking. So to the 49ers PR people, he's like, you have to stop me. I won't.
What a magnificent man he is.
It's so much fun talking to him.
And very interesting. Because he will just throw players under the bus.
Yeah. Like I asked him, I was like, so what does Spencer Burford or anyone have to do to win the job? And his answer was, make less mistakes. And he used like this. Earlier on, he'd been talking about,
There's a line,
and under this, you can't play.
Right.
And when he was talking about
Burford, anyone above the line, I can fix, was essentially his thesis.
And then he basically spoke, he's like, Burford's the most talented guy, but he makes too many mistakes. He's like, he makes 2 to 3 damning mistakes a game, was almost explicitly what he said.
Yeah.
And if he can limit those, he can play.
Coach, why am I not playing? Well, because of those 2 to 3 plays where our quarterback nearly dies.
Including the Super Bowl, which is why...
Where it was like 3 or 4.
Right. And there one specific play that they would have won if Burford did not have a breakdown.
Yeah.
So that'll do it.
Yeah.
But he basically left... He's like, John Feliciano won it because he made fewer mistakes and was just functional. And Pooney... what did you think of what he said about Pooney?
I thought it was interesting because they asked, "What do you like about Dominic Pooney?" And he's like, "Well, he didn't really do anything that we do in college,
right? But
you saw these traits." And he too made the Colton McKivitz comparison, which is something that we called out pretty much immediately. That's kind of the model the Niners are going for because it's malleable and it kind of has a high floor. I know a lot of people don't like Colton McKivitz, but like it's just about mitigating. They can't get him like Colton McKivitz will be the line forever and ever. They can't go below the line. Colton McKivitz won't go below the line.
Right.
He might not be very good, but he won't go below the line. So they're just trying to get in as many of those guys as possible for sort of a baseline competence. I thought it was interesting with Pooney because everyone's in agreement he should be a guard.
Right.
His movement more profiles as a guard. His hands more profile as a guard. I think size-wise, it's not an issue at all. He's big. I know some people don't like the concept of a 6'5" guard. I think it's very prevalent now, especially in outside zones where you bring tackles on the outside. Now you're setting an edge as a guard. So you need to have a little bit of that. And I think it's been successful with a lot of the outside zone teams. I think Green Bay probably be the best example of that so far. Regardless, Forster kind of echoed everything that we had said about Pooney, which is always fun to hear. And then, except for one thing, which is my suggestion that Pooney's best position in the future might be center. And Forster said strictly that would be the one position I'm not down with.
It was interesting that he said that.
Which then I said, what do you like about the Nuge, our boy Drake Nugent? And he and Drake Nugent's dad played together.
Wild. Yeah.
This is why you ask these random ass questions. Hey, there's a lull. Tell me about...
How old is Drake Nugent's father?
I don't know.
Okay.
33.
Sorry.
So the Nuge's dad, we're going to look him up. We did not do our preparation here.
No.
And so the Nuge's dad and Forster played together. The Nuge's dad was the quarterback. And by the way, the Nuge is the appropriate nickname.
Yeah, as Forster said.
As confirmed. We are simpatico with our man.
I mean, the guy's name is Nugent.
The guy's name is Nugent. You have to call him the Nuge.
Especially as a center, like a bowling ball center.
Yeah.
For sure.
So he went into kind of what they're looking for at center, and amongst many questions, but in that one in particular, it was brought up, the smarts and the coach on the field aspect. And, we talk about some of the great centers in the NFL. I mean, listen, like our man Humphrey is incredible.
Yep.
And he's a bowling ball and he's an athletic marvel, but like what really separates a guy like Jason Kelce isn't his physical traits, but it's his ability to be the coach on the field, call out the sets, all these things. And so I wonder if that, without being expressly stated, is the limitation with Pooney, in that they don't think that he's a coach on the field, in which case you don't want to touch the ball.
With Burford specifically, it was like, what he said was there's like a level of talent where...
We had a lot of levels.
Right. He's like, there's like a level of talent where you can buy in and you go in the early rounds, but at a certain point, it becomes about, does this guy understand what's going on? And like at a conceptual level, he's like, because
and beyond his position.
Right.
Can he mold?
And especially on the interior of the offensive line. He's like, with tackles, it matters a little less. You're kind of doing your own thing. He's like, but with the interior of the offensive line, they're working together with everyone. And they need to understand conceptually what they're trying to do, be able to react on the fly and understand a variety of scenarios. And so that was interesting, especially with regards to Burford and getting it. And like, is he saying Burford just doesn't get it, or is he close to getting it? And he basically said, like, maybe Burford will get it this year, but he might not.
Yeah. I kind of feel bad for Burford in some
too.
senses. Like, he got thrown right into it. Everyone was saying, oh, it's so ready-made, it's so easy. And I think that in a world where everything is expectations versus reality, I think they built him up a little bit too fast. He quickly found his ceiling, and then because of that, he hits the ceiling, kind of comes back crashing through the floor. I don't think he's done anything. I don't think he's done anything that you wouldn't have expected, given the fact that he's had moments where he sucked. Like, he's been put in a lot of situations. You're going to run into those situations where he sucks, whereas I think anyone else gets drafted in the 5th round, they're not getting the opportunity to suck like that. Yeah. And you're going to expect them to suck. Oh, we're throwing this guy in here. But they just kind of rolled with it. They're like, oh, this guy's ready-made and ready to go. And you're like, okay, like, we'll take your word for it. And he was. He's given very solid snaps. But, I can't believe the standard does have to be the standard when you're a professional and it's long-term. But, like, I think there has to be some level of grading on the curve as well when you're dealing with a guy
when you're in the Super Bowl and he has a protection breakdown.
No,
costs you. But
the standard is the standard. But, like, and we're at the point now where it has to be. It's empirical. There's no. Hey, you've been in the league now for 3 years. Like, we can't pretend as if you're still a fifth-round rookie.
Right.
But it just felt like they never got the opportunity to be a fifth-round rookie and make mistakes.
I'm with you.
And it's going to still bubble up.
It's a tough system to do that in. And the last thing, I think, connecting that, when he's talking about sort of the traits they look for, especially with interior offensive linemen.
Yeah.
He was asked, a lot of people sort of expect you guys to draft early round talent. And he goes, okay, so I leave that to Kyle and John. But my opinion, and this is just my opinion.
This is the offensive line coach.
As if Kyle Shanahan is not wondering what his long trusted offensive line coach is thinking.
And basically his new number 2.
Right. As if it's just his opinion in a vacuum. I'm not ripping on Firster. I'm just saying.
No, this is a compliment to him.
I'm just saying the idea that Shanahan's like, I'm not going to ask what Firster thinks.
No.
And Firster goes, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, I would draft guys who touch the ball in like the first and second rounds. And he's like, yeah, you can get Trent Williams, and those guys are difference makers. But basically, like, an elite tackle that's worth taking in the first round has to kind of fall into your lap.
Well, especially for this team.
Right. And that, in his opinion, after like the second, maybe the third round, wide receivers,
they're still really good. Yeah.
They're all kind of off the board. Which obviously makes a lot of sense with them drafting Pearsall. But I thought that was interesting. And that he's essentially like, in the second, third, fourth, even fifth round, we can find guys who can be starting offensive linemen, which is really enlightening to their strategy. Like, remember that going forward in future drafts. Like,
well, I mean, if you needed a case in point, this past draft.
Right.
And even then, I think they stretched a bit on Pooney just because it felt like there was a run coming, and they're like, oh, shit, we got it. We got to do this.
And he was one of the only guys where I think they're like, okay, he's a guard who could start day one, but he actually could be a swing tackle for us. Yeah. And we don't know what we have besides
there's value
Moore.
There. And they like Moore. And I thought Forster made a really interesting point about Moore in that because Trent so rarely practices, Moore is effectively the starting left tackle at all times. Except for Sundays, and that it doesn't give him an opportunity to show what he could do at any other position. And I kind of thought about it, and I go, like, that's a really interesting thing that I had never thought of before, and totally sucks for that guy. And I wonder if at some point he's just going to try to leave, but maybe it's too late now. But that's I
know there's certain positions where it's like you are exactly good enough to be our backup at this spot. And you have no leverage, and we have such a specific need here that you get to do this one thing and this one thing only, and then when you hit free agency, good luck. Yeah. Because you did what we'll
bring you back for 5% more.
Right. Which, and maybe you'll get a 1-year prove-it deal and, fall into a Colt McKivett situation.
Well, not even that. Just like, you want to go try it somewhere else where you're not sure if you're going to make the team.
Right.
Where it's like, you're on this team. We can't lose you. Like, you're incredibly valuable, but we're not going to show you fiscally. So I now view Jalen Moore in somewhat of a sadder light. Like there's this the plight of the swing tackle.
He's trapped to be there. Only like he could be right tackle too, but really he's their backup left tackle
because he's always the left tackle
behind arguably the greatest left tackle of all time, at least one of the
greatest.
Best.
Yeah. So, Anthony Munoz has something to say, but like there's Willie Roaf. Regardless,
just start some naming.
You want to just name some tackles?
I will.
I do think that if let's do a little housekeeping here.
Okay.
I think that we need to focus on offensive line play so much this season because I'm feeling like this past year I've gotten really, really into like the nuance of baseball pitching and a lot of the advanced stuff and like pitch design and all these things. I end up on YouTube watching like Driveline, like Rapsodo videos of like pitchers in Division II trying to learn a new pitch, and I'm like engrossed for 20 minutes as I see
Peter's not doing well.
No, clearly, but like I find that really interesting. Like, I feel like offensive line play, there's some similarities there to where people just speak in these big platitudes in the like offensive line bad, offensive line good, pitching good, pitching bad.
I'm going to need to bring back my spreadsheet because I haven't stuck with it consistently enough because I have a life a little bit.
It's debatable.
Not saying a lot, but it takes a lot of time to log snaps and detailed snaps. But what I do is
I'm going to be real. I think that the spreadsheet died because you kept sending it to me, and I'm like, I don't have time to read that.
I would go through every single snap
you would
from the 49ers defensive line, and I would go very bad, neutral, good, very good. and I would grade it on, a scale. And obviously Nick Bosa would grade out insanely well.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a really useful exercise. Even if you do that for a game where it's like, oh, Bosa hasn't had a sack in 2 games, you're like, he's doing everything. He's holding this defensive line together. Like, he's outrageous.
If he goes away,
like,
it's
he's
over.
Getting double teamed and just making run stops where you're like, oh, that was a nice job. Bosa had
Maybe
a good
we
game.
should create just like a 49er-centric PFF alternative.
Yeah.
Only for line play.
Only for
meaty boys.
I've done it for tight ends, but it's not worth it because it doesn't really matter. I did it when I was trying to figure out what Charlie Warner did.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, I presume George Kittle is here.
Yep.
I haven't laid eyes on him.
He was at least here last OTA.
He's sure as shit not practicing, nor should he. Pline. A little yes, a little no from me.
Yeah, a little stiff, a little.
He ran a little stop and go, and it was mostly stop.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the lateral quickness with him, which is weird because he's a basketball player, but
he's slow.
Yeah, that said, had like a nice little 5-yard under, and then basically flung a linebacker off of his body.
He's got that down.
Given what they have at tight end, I think he might end up as their blocking tight end, who can actually just
be what we thought Charlie Warner could have always been.
The most valuable thing he could provide to them is being a blocking tight end who occasionally could leak out for a couple 5-yard dink and dunks to let Kittle get more involved in the pass game.
Yeah. That's fair.
Braden Willis, I think, is more athletic.
Use him as a true Y.
Yeah.
He had a nice catch today.
Cam Latu's still not out there.
Cam Latu's not going to be out there.
They
don't send you home from training camp.
You know how I feel about it.
Yeah, well, the glorious past of third-round picks.
Yeah, I want to see more out of Pline with pads on. I did talk to Brian Fleury, tight ends coach last week, who was pretty high in his praise. He also praised Kittle for the fact that Pline's coming from Furman, and Kittle's like, you're going to be okay, bud. Like, he's swimming under information. Kittle's like, it's okay, buddy. Yeah. You're going to be fine.
You don't have to worry about an overload of information with George Kittle.
Right, but what Fleury was said is that there's nothing he thinks he won't be able to do, which I think for a kid out of Furman who played basketball for 3 years and really only has been playing tight end for a year or two.
It's a big bet on
athletic
ability.
Coming to the 49ers, it's pretty high praise. So we'll see what he does in camp. A little stiff. He has trouble separating from anything. I need to see a little more.
He's just slow. He just looks slow out there, and that might not be an issue if he has a limited role. But if he's the number 2 tight end, then you're a little bit concerned about it. I mean, that is a position that is in crazy flux. And you want to talk about, the point that I made to kind of jump off the show, this team is screwed if Brock Purdy goes down for snaps.
Kittle goes down.
Oh, my God. I mean, they might as well just not even bother with the tight end because I think the backup is Juszczyk. Based on some of the stuff that I saw today.
And Juwan Jennings, really.
They might be able to make something out of that.
That's an alternative, is you just don't use a tight end and you just have Juwan Jennings as your tight end.
On a tight slot, yeah. That's a thought. Anything else you want to say to the people, Jake?
Good to be back. Dieter and I were both, intermittently
we were
ill.
It.
So back to back.
Yeah.
We're good now.
Sure.
But that's why we disappeared for a week or two.
Also, it's fucking May. Get a grip.
Yeah. That said, don't have too much to say. I wrote a nice column about the Giants, and of course, Kyle Harrison's getting rocked.
I wrote a mean thing about Kyle Harrison, and then it immediately came to pass.
It wasn't. Yeah, whatever. Weakest.
It's a bad fastball, Jake.
Weakest bench. He doesn't have much. He doesn't have
all
much
horizontal.
Weakest bench is clearing. Not even. Also,
it's not a benches clearing brawl if you just stand there and talk.
Does the bullpen? Do they come out just because they have nothing to do,
or
because if the other side gets a numbers advantage and the bullpen's not out there, then it's a problem? Are they legally obligated?
And you know what?
It just looks so dumb when nothing happens.
The big question that I would have been asking, and I don't know the answer to this right now.
Who's their enforcer?
For the Giants, I think it's Luciano. But
he left with a hamstring injury, by the way.
Okay, so then it's Soler. He's the biggest.
That's true.
Chapman seems like a red ass, though, so look out for him. Okay, Brett Wisely.
Sean Jelly's got long limbs. He can tangle people up.
The reach alone. Do they have one door from the bullpens in center field? Is there like a communal path? Question. Because they could have just fought it out there. Maybe that could have turned into something.
I think they have two.
I think it's two.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, it used to be very easy to clear.
I was watching Angel Hernandez lowlights, and I watched Asdrubal Cabrera get ejected from spring training.
Yeah.
And Angel Hernandez almost threw him out, going to first base and waited for him to get on. Then Asdrubal Cabrera looked back, and he gets thrown out. But it's spring training, so there was one exit, and it was in right field.
Yeah.
So Asdrubal Cabrera has to walk out to the right field fence.
What a man. I will not miss him. Warriors still fucked?
Yeah, I mean,
that's the end of that segment.
Yeah, we'll wait until.
I'll tell you something cool that happened in Theater Curtain Box Hockey.
What happened?
The Sharks signed Will Smith, who was their draft pick last year.
Yep, last year,
and played for Boston College.
He put on any weight?
Well, he was wonderful in World Juniors, and he led the NCAA in points. So I don't really give a damn if you put on weight or not. The Sharks are nowhere near the playoffs, so you don't need to worry about that too much. But this all but tells us that not only, they're going to take Macklin Celebrini, but there was a notion, a thought, a theory that perhaps the Sharks would wait and let Celebrini, who is currently 17 years old, play another year at BU, and that they would let Will Smith, who needs to put on some weight, play another year at BC, and those guys could just rip it up, and that we'd all be making very good use of our ESPN Plus subscription, which has some great Hockey East stuff going on. That does not seem to be the case. So I would expect Celebrini from day one, and they still need to hire a coach. They still need to sign some NHL quality players, but that's going to be kind of fun.
2-3 years down the road,
they could be cooking.
Yep.
They really could be cooking.
We could be talking about the Sharks. We could be talking about the Valkyries. It's the Valkyries, not the Valkyrie, right?
It's a plural.
Okay.
Which I was very happy about. That was like my one thing.
Isn't Valkyrie plural in and of itself?
No, there's a singular Valkyrie, and then there are many Valkyries.
Okay, I wasn't sure if this was
Is it Flight of the Valkyrie or Flight of the Valkyries? I don't know.
This feels like a deer situation. There's many deer, many Valkyrie.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they're called the Valkyries, so we should call them that.
Yeah, and I was excited because I really don't like non-pluralized formal nouns. Like this is I do not care for so like in particular, Miami Heat, Orlando Magic, the entire WNBA is like the Fever, the Sun, like thank God there's the Sparks and the Aces because the Wings, the Dallas Wings,
the Mercury's kind of
the Mercury, which like
kind of cool.
It's not a bad name, but it's very difficult as a sports writer.
Yeah,
someone who uses it. The Chicago White Sox are not technically a plural. They don't like it.
One sock?
Apparently, they like it to be used as Chicago White Sox player or Sox player. So it's not, you can't say he was a Chicago White Sox.
So you have to say the Soxes?
The Soxes? The Battle of the Soxes.
That's psychotic.
So you can't be an Indiana Fever. You're an Indiana Fever player. You can't be a Miami Heat. You're a Miami Heat player. I hated it. I still hate it.
I don't.
And
like
I was
that
very
at all.
happy. So when people were talking like fog or some ridiculous abstract noun or non-pluralized noun, it pissed me off. So I'm very happy they went with the plurals.
I will close out with another side rant.
Yes.
Because we're getting into non-pluralized nouns.
Great.
I have a font thing. I hate all those like nice new houses that are just very square with no personality whatsoever. They're all blocky.
Townhouses?
Yeah, with like cement, and they're all the same, and they're like nice and modern, and they all have that one font.
Oh no, I know what you're talking about.
That non-serif font.
Yes.
In like
Aventura
metal.
It's Aventura.
And I'm like, give me a serif, you cowards. Show some class. Show some culture. Put a serif on the end of that font.
You cannot serif modern. Modern is intrinsically non-serif.
It disgusts me.
Listen,
we're gonna have
the older you are, the more serifs you get.
I'm telling you.
When you're trying to do a modern house.
Also, if you're writing and you're sick of Times New Roman, Palatino linotype.
Wow.
Top font.
It's the worst take that's ever happened on this podcast.
You're wrong.
Right in Aventura or nothing. No serifs in my typing.
Palatino linotype.
Have a good week, everybody.
Appreciate you, folks.